like will be revolving around the agile process and the project management process that we usually follow in like plethora of projects that do come across in Antino. Other than that, there are things and terminologies that we often come across while we are on any project. So there are things that we do notice, like many of the times, the stories or the story points, the terminologies used by the client are not very clear to us. So just to ensure, like from the next time or after this session, whoever has joined this session should have a clarity on the things, on the terms at least used by the clients on a daily basis, and exactly what are the roles and responsibilities that we do share in an agile methodology. So I guess we can just start a session with few of the introductions that we will be covering in this session. So the main contents of this session would be the agile process, the difference between a methodology and a framework, because like there are times when we do come across the term methodology, like agile is a methodology and then Scrum is a framework. So these are the terms we do often do come across when we are working in any of the projects. So, and then we will be covering something about the product and the project. So there's a minor differences between product and a project. And then the roles and responsibilities of a product manager, since you must have also come across the situation where the product manager do from the client side have a different requirements, and then you might be wondering what exactly is the role of a project manager over there, and what is the role of a product manager in that particular scenario. Then we will come across the roles and responsibilities that we do share, like the roles of our software development team, the roles of a Scrum Master, the business analyst, and all those things. That was introduced back in 2001 by the 17 development professionals gathered. So that is something, an Agile Manifesto is really not exactly what we would say defines the entire process, but it should be something that everyone in like that are part of a project, from the stakeholders to the product team to the project management team to the developers engaged in a project, should really know. So the Agile Manifesto do contains and a set of instructions or the core values of an Agile. So what happens before, like in order to for a project to be successful, there was always a particular set of instructions that are like noted down, and the tools that they would be using. But what happens in that process is the communication gap during the formation of the entire process. One thing that was often missed is the client itself or the project that we are really working on. So the individual interactions and the interactions with the team or with the stakeholders is something that was one of the core values of Agile. So one of the core Agile values that mentions is individual interactions are more important than the processes and the tools. The second thing that was mentioned in an Agile manifesto was focus on working software rather than thorough documentation. For example, like what used to be happen before is like if there's a development process or the project has been developed, so the documentation of the entire thing do takes a lot of time, and the working software like is something that is taken a backhand at the later stages. So what Agile manifesto do outlines is like the focus on the working software is much more important than the documentation. And third thing that it do uh, highlights the collaboration instead of contract negotiation. So whatever happens, like earlier, what happens, like if there's a certain changes that needs to be done, so there were contract negotiations from the client side, and the what do requires is like their satisfaction and their approval for the things that needs to be changed. So that do takes a lot of time, that changes the timelines or impacts the timelines of a particular project. So in order to handle or target that, the collaboration was prioritized over the contract negotiation, and the focus on responding to change is something that was one of the Agile manifesto. core values. So now often we do come across the word agile. So agile is a framework as like agile is a methodology that we do come across, and then Scrum is framework. That is the term that we often do come across. So what exactly is the difference between a framework and then a methodology? So framework are usually incomplete structures and are often completed with the help of tools or the processes. Whereas methodology defines a set of instructions and it do includes the tools and practices need to complete that particular project. So that is the difference or the main difference between a framework and a methodology. So now moving forward, there's a term that we do often come across that our product, and it is usually used by the term by the clients, mostly the term product. And then as soon as you move within the organization level, you will just hear the term the project. So what exactly is the difference between a product and a project? So, when a product is taken into consideration, a product can be anything from software to jewelry or even consulting. And each product has to go through a product life cycle, like exactly from the initiation of the idea to its release to the market. Everything like the product life cycle has is a part that a product has to go through in order to be a successful product. Whereas project are something that do have an outcome and a deliverable, and it is something like from revamping to internal process and everything that do includes it. It do have a particular set of instructions, and like outcome and deliverables are really fixed at that time. So that is what a difference between a product and a project really looks like. So now the role of a product manager. So if we just take any project into consideration, there are products the product manager. So product manager do have certain duties, or I would say like the goal of a product manager usually that lies within the product release. What would be the product design look like, and the data and analysis, like how will be the product really look in the market, who are our customers, and what are the objectives and priorities, how will be the development and testing will be done for the product. And even if the product fails, so there's always a contingency plan. So what will be the contingency plan? So that is the role of a product manager. But where the project managers comes into play is something when a product is well defined, and then it's done into like it's broken down into various tasks, and how will be the project planning, what will be the task management, how will be the task management, the process of mapping, and how will be the project launch, and how will be it will be closed. So it will be like it doesn't have anything to do with how will the project product or project really behave in a market, how many customers will it really come into play, or who are our target customers, what are the contingency plan if the product fails. No, that is the role of a product manager. And uh, so the main focus that we do over here is like the product and the project manager, or is like the uh, like product management usually concentrates over the product strategy, and whereas the project manager do works over the project coordination or the work coordination, like the KPIs and the scope of the project resources. Okay, just a second, let me just share. Okay. So what exactly the project KPIs? Like KPIs are the key performance indicators. So when we do come across a term KPI, so what we often like think what exactly the KPI do indicate. So KPIs are mostly how well, or how do we indicate that a particular thing has been done, or how much work has been done. Or KPI can be used in anything from sales to project management to any of the thing that do requires how much work is it done, and how do we indicate in terms of data and graphs. So that is what a KPI do indicates over here. And what a project manager do is like they communicate with the teams risk, what will be the risk that might come across the project. They do just broke it down into pieces, whereas the product manager sees it through the entire life cycle and sees how the product will be, like how will be the product behave in the market till its marketing, and even how what would be the sales objective in the later stages. So now moving forward, please let me know if you have any doubts still yet, because these are the terms that we really do need to know before moving forward. So I guess that do provides a bit of idea on what exactly we will be talking about in the entire session. So it's better if we just have, if
I
anyone have, yeah,
Yeah, hi Anant. I have a question.
yeah.
Could you just let me know whether see the role of a project manager or a role of a product manager, is it codependent or independent? Like, are they codependent on each other,
No,
or both are independent and separate?
no, actually, like product manager and project manager do needs to work very collaboratively. Like they needs to work in hand to hand, and the both of the work goes hand to hand with each other, because at this if like during the product management, the only thing that do requires is like that particular product is formed at its best, and the project manager do ensure that project, like the particular product or the particular thing, is formed as per the expectations of the product owner and the stakeholders. But what are the exactly expectations of the stakeholders, and what exactly how will be the market be doing, is the one that product manager do have a clear idea of what exactly the product wants. So the product manager and project manager roles are something that goes hand to hand. Even in some of the scenarios, like there might be the product manager role is most closely related to the program manager itself. So it's like they both are dependent on each other, and they do both do play an important role. But at certain scenarios, there are times when product manager do plays the role of a project manager also. So that is how it goes.
So, I mean, you can say that, for a project manager, their basic role would be handling, like basically managing people. And for a project manager, their role would be around the product. It revolves around the product, right?
Yes, like product manager would be like end to end, from the creation of an idea to its launch in the market. How will be the what will be the sales objective? Who will be the target audience? Everything will be the part of a product manager. But project manager do have like a particular set of instructions that this is the product that needs to be done, and how it behaves in the market is certainly that's not part of a project manager. So that's
Yeah,
how
got
it's.
it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Hina. So we will be just be moving forward now. So the roles that we often do come across is the product owner. So product owner are like what we would say is the voice of a customer. The product owner distills the insights, the ideas, and the feedback to create a product vision. Like how will be the product really look like? They would set up the backlogs. Like now we come across the word backlog. So what exactly are the backlogs? So what happens when we found a particular product? There are certain things that needs to be done in a product, like the minimum criteria that a product should have. So that is like documented in a particular format, and that is like backlog. So in the later stages, we will be discussing how this backlog will be formed and what are the priorities. So the priorities of the backlog are often formed by the discussed by the product owner, and what features or what releases do of the product are most important to a particular um, team or for a particular project is what something the product owner looks into. And they are the one who would be communicating to external stakeholders and translate their team, like their needs to the team in an easier way for them to understand. And they would be like setting the clear vision of the product to the team. So that is the role of a product owner. And now that role of a software development team. So the software development team is often it is often understood like software development team, the only work they need to do is like development. No, that is one part of the software development, but what exactly is needed in the project management is like from sprint planning to goal setting. Everything is a part of where the software development teams comes into play. Like the software development teams often do includes developer, quality assurance engineers, and the UX designers. And depending on roles, mostly depend on project to project basis, like what exactly are the needs of a project. So like if we just take software development team into consideration, so they often do helps in how much effort that particular thing really needs in a product. For performing that particular product is something that software development team helps with, and even the test of the products, the prototypes, and how will be the quality be ensured, that is something a part of the software development team. And the tech and the team leads come into play where planning, implementation, estimating part comes into play, and like it's a non-functional acceptance criteria, sequencing, dependencies, and the technology that would be used and the security considerations that we need to take into consideration while forming a project is what's the role of a tech or a team leads. So now moving forward, there are terms like Scrum Master. So Scrum Master is someone that do holds a bridge between the stakeholders and the management team, like and the software development team and the entire team. They do holds the bridge between them. So like facilitating the Scrum meetings to leading the sprint plannings, like how would be the sprint look like? What would be the the backlogs, the things that we have taken from the backlog, are they achievable? And then having a discussion around them, then holding a retrospective session. So that is what the Scrum Master really do. The one thing that is really a role of a Scrum Master and that do holds a really good purpose is like uh, the management of the obstacles and the communication. So what during the entire process, what have usually happens is like if a product is in development phase, so there are times when development is going on for a few days, and exactly don't have an idea what exactly are the obstacles, or if someone is really stuck into something. So what happens to remove this communication gap, or just to ensure that the communication between the team isn't held off, because there are times, because like in a smaller project, there are not various blockers in terms of communication, because the team is small and they do have a regular communication. But what happens if we just take a project into consideration that have like 20 or 30 developers that are working on several like different technologies, and so how will be the communication between them goes? So not really smooth, right? So just to ensure that no one's work get hampered due to like like absence of someone from the office, or like if there's a dependency on someone, that is what a Scrum Master does. Like they do target the obstacles that a particular person can have, and who exactly can help them trigger it. So that is the role of a Scrum Master. Now the business analyst, the term that we do often come across is business analyst. So business analyst is someone that closely work with the product owners. So they help in creating the wireframes. What exactly are the expectations? The view of like product, the documenting of the user stories. Like user stories is something that we will be discussing later. So just want you to take a note of it. Like the user stories is something that we will often come across, and that is something everyone should be aware of while we are in any of the projects. So because there are times when we do come across these terms and we really don't know what the client is really expecting of, of that particular thing, and then reviewing the test results after the testing is done. So before moving on to user stories and the test results, there is a term that is Scrum. Now, as each one of you must be attending the daily stand-ups now. So that is something you must be thinking like, what exactly is the daily stand-up? Why do we really need it? And what exact purpose does it hold? If and We often do come across instances where developer used to say like, I didn't join this Scrum because I don't have any work to do yesterday. So exactly, just to target that point and just to hold it, like exactly everyone in the team should have a clear idea what exactly the other person is doing. So that is when the stand-up comes into play. And to be really honest, this stand-up comes into play and is a term that is often used in the Scrum itself. So what Scrum does is like it do breaks the entire project into small chunks of work or like small results that can be achieved within a particular set of time. Let's take into consideration a project that is 6 months long. Okay, so uh, what if we just take an traditional approach? What happens that the stakeholders, or we would say the anyone who is related to the product, the owners of the product, what happens? They only get to know the product, what exactly it looks like, how it feels like, how it really um, like really behave in the market. We'll only know it once it ends in at the end of the 6 months or at the end of the project. So just to ensure like any of their needs or just to ensure the agility in the entire thing, the Scrum was introduced. So what Scrum does is like it broke the entire project into small chunks. Okay. And like the milestones, for example, if we just take a simple website into consideration, like the login page is just one milestone, and then the home page would be the another milestone, and then um that is how it goes. Okay, so in that milestone itself, there are small sprints. So sprints do vary from project to project, product to product, and humans to humans. Like what exactly, how small do we want the sprints to be? So it usually varies from 5 days to 10 days. So and during that sprint, what exactly a team will be focusing, targeting, or will be achieving is something that is the part of a sprint. So that is what an agile Scrum does. So a Scrum breaks the entire project into small chunks, and then these small chunks of work is divided into like the cross-functional teams work together, comes into play, and then just makes a meaningful product out of it. So that is what an Scrum is. So now moving forward, there was an agile and a waterfall approach. Please, yes, please let me know if you have any doubt. Yes, Aryan, are you asking something?
Sorry, my mic was.
Yeah. Okay. So what exactly is an agile and a waterfall approach? So waterfall is something that is is very well suited for the small projects. Not exactly for the small projects, but it do are is very useful in the projects that do have a particular set of instructions. Like if we just take into consideration the um, a building project or a construction project where the end results really need to be fixed, and there is no certain agility that needs to be over there, because us change in the plans at the middle would really change many of the things. As in the project management, there are things like budget, scope, and time. So if any of those changes, there might be a great change in any in each one of them. So that is where waterfall approach comes into play, where the end results are really clear and the involvement of each and everyone roles and responsibilities are clear to each and everyone. Whereas in agile, client feedback is a crucial thing. Like in agile, we just take client feedback from time to time at the end of the sprint, just know what exactly if the particular thing is like exactly to their up to their expectations, or is there something that needs to be changed, or if there is something that really don't hold the motive that they really want to fulfill from that product. So that is what an agile is. Now, the second thing is Agile versus Kanban. So now many of us must have already came across this word in some of the other projects, the Kanban. So Kanban is a project management uh, methodology like that seeks to improve the project management process through visualization. So when I just say visualization, so like from a human psychology behavior, there were times like most of the things don't used to be really colorful, but it was later introduced like when we just take Kanban into introduction, like it just takes into consideration the human psychology, you know uh, and according to human psychology, the colors and what really brings more understanding to a particular thing. So what Kanban does is like it was previously introduced like earlier it was introduced as a physical form, like what happens, there used to be a board with different like to-do lists and what have been achieved, what needs to be done next, and what have been developed, what is under testing, and different columns, and each column used to have different colors, and even in those different colors, like there used to be a different notes and marks bookmarks like with different colors depending on the priority and how important is that thing. So what does this color do creates is like this board used to be at a center hall where all the people used to sit. So what exactly happens So what exactly happens is like they used to sit in a center hall, and the exact visualization of the things, the Kanban, like there are plethora of colors and the to-do list, and these are the things that used to move on a daily basis, like from to do to have been developed to do in to move to testing and all those things. So that is where the Kanban really came into play and soon emerged as an important project management methodology. So that is how the Kanban really works. So let me just show you how the Kanban really looks like. So if we just take, it's not exactly the Kanban board that do happens. Like let me just show you a Kanban board. Yes. So this is what a Kanban board really looks like in Asana. So there are various tools that we do use in project management like Jira, Asana, and most of us might be really familiar with Notion. That is what we use here in Antino. So this is like how Kanban board really look like the new request, what is in progress and complete, what has been completed, who has worked on it, and what work was done on the particular thing. So that is what a Kanban board really looks like. But it used to be more interactive and really more interesting when it's in its physical form, and that's where the Kanban really came into play initially. So now moving forward, the primary agile process, the Kanban and Scrum, the Scrum Master facilitates the Scrum meetings and most of the things we have covered. So now the most important thing, and this is where the entire thing come into play, the process of agile development
Anant,
cycle.
sorry for
Yeah,
interrupting. I have
yeah,
another question.
yeah, please
Yeah.
do.
So it's like what tool? How do we decide like what tool do we have? Do like we need to use? Either Jira or Kanban, like you mentioned. So how do we decide
Like
that? What are the
like
factors?
actually, there are a plethora of things that like facilitates which tool exactly needs to be used at that particular point of time. Like it do depends on project to project. So if we just take small projects for a smaller time, it's not always like and there's even a theory like like agility is not something that is for every project, and not every organization till date have like benefited from implementing the agile till date. So even when do we say like Agile do brings results, but at the same time, there are terms and there are times when Agile really doesn't provides the result. So when in the project planning phase, uh, it exactly depends like what exactly is the product that we are going to develop, how big would be the product will be, how long will the engagement be, how where how many like cross-functional teams would be working in that particular project, and like what level of clarity do everyone in the project, like everyone engaged in the project from a stakeholder to software development do needs software developer do needs for that particular project. So taking all these scenarios into consideration, after that only in the project planning phase, it is like usually discussed in the product. This is something that is a part of a product management, you know. So at that phase, it is usually decided like which exact tool or which exact approach will be really useful for that particular kind of project. So it really doesn't like if we just take from the project management scenario, most of the things are already pre-engaged, already pre-decided, I would say, because in the project management, if we just take into consideration, there would be clients or there would be the product managers who would be really comfortable using an Asana. And while deciding the software that we would be using or the mode of communication that we would be using, even the feedback from the people who would be working in that project or a product is what is taken into consideration. So that is part of a product management and project management, and everyone that goes hands to hand. And that is when it is decided, like there's a really interesting thing, you know, even the mode of communication and how often would they be needed, like the communication, if if we just take an email to the stakeholders, how often would they be needed, and the mode of communication, like if it's a communication between team, how will it be done, and if it's communication between two individuals, how will it be done, is everything that is decided during the product management and project management initiation phase or planning phase. So that is where it is usually decided, and depending on the various factors, like which tool we would be using. I guess that clears your right, Hina, correct?
Yeah, it does. One more thing. Sorry, I'm dragging it a bit long.
No.
When you started, you mentioned that agile usually doesn't bring you results when when starting or when you
Mhm.
jump into it. Usually, it doesn't bring results, but it does when we implement the agile process on a big project.
Mhm.
So you are saying
It's
that
not like on a
for
big
us first.
project, it's mostly like Agile is not for everyone. It doesn't depends on the size of the project. It's mostly like the Scrum is something the Kanban is something that is usually preferred for the smaller projects and all those things. But Agile, if we just take into consideration, as I have told before, like Agile is a methodology, you know, defines the sets, the tools, the processes, everything. So when we just say the methodology word, so it too defines everything. So when we just say like Agile is not for everyone, it is not like for if we just take an organization into consideration, you know, there are a plethora of examples in the history where Agile really doesn't found to be fruitful in many of the scenarios. So that is what I meant by it. So yeah, please do. Please ask, please throw me your questions now. Yeah, please.
I think that's all from my side.
Okay,
Anyone
then.
And
else has a question?
Anand,
Yeah.
just give me a minute. Yeah, Hina. So actually, in addition to what Anand said, I also want to add something here. So the thing you asked in very first thing is tool versus Kanban. So this is two different things. Tool is something which is used to organize this whole agile process. That is one, and the Kanban is go hand in hand with along with sprint. I mean, the sprint versus Kanban is two different thing. So if you decided with which tool you are going ahead, like whether it may be Jira, Notion, or anything, you have to choose. The next thing is in which process, agile process, you wanted to bring your whole project in. I mean, in the Kanban mode or in the sprint planning. I mean, sprint mode. So just to choose these two, you have to decide just based on your requirements. Suppose you are bringing some requirements, you have some like fair requirements, exact requirement you have with you in hand. So it's better in that case you can go with a sprint way, because in the sprint is something like we decide to have the sprint for a fixed number of time. Let's suppose we are having a sprint of 15 days. In that sprint we'll be having a sprint planning where we'll be deciding and giving the task to the development team, like in this 15 days of time you need to come up with this feature and everything. So in this way, if the requirement is very clear, we can go with the sprint way. And suppose if your organization is very if your team size is very less and you don't have the exact requirement. I mean, usually we have like nowadays we have in the startup, like the requirement used to get very change very frequently, right? So in that case, it's better to prefer Kanban mode, because in the sprint things we have some like metrics which will tell like how good we are performing, how good the development team and the overall team is performing, so that the higher authorities can have a look to that metrics. One metrics is like the burn down chart. If the team is working properly and they are closing their task on the sprint time itself, so the chart will go down and telling that this sprint is going well, it's getting reduced, the number of tasks is getting reduced, like that. But in the Kanban mode we don't have any kind of metrics which tell the performance of those things. Like just to accommodate so that we can accommodate new frequent requirements, like and we can start the work. I hope you got the point.
Yeah, I think I just correct me if I'm wrong. It's like, so first we decide the tool and then we jump on the methodology, right?
Yes, yes. And the tool selection can be based on like your financial how
Yeah,
financial good you are in, and based on those things. Okay.
all right. Got it.
And also
Thank you.
if your team size is very low, so what Anant was trying to say, if your team size is very small, so it will be kind of overkilling to have this whole agile process, right? I mean, if you have only two developers,
Mhm.
you can directly check those things, right? Why to have this whole tools and everything? So
Right.
it will be best suited if your team size is more than 4 or 5, like that, and we
And that's
have multiple
understandable.
teams.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah,
like
Anant, over to you.
like that yes. Also, that is one of the things that I have discussed in Agile Manifesto. So I guess that brings more clarity to it, like human interactions over processes and tools. That is one of the things that are the four core values of an Agile Manifesto. When we are saying an Agile into our words, when we bring Agile into our words or into our vocab, I guess Agile Manifesto is something that we really can't miss into. So I guess now you got more clarity on why exactly we just say like human interactions over processes and tools.
Right. Yeah. Got it.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Also,
Thank you, Ina.
Shashank, hello. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Also, Shashank and
Yeah.
Anant, I do have one question related to the not project manager, product owner, and the product manager. So, if I talk about if in a team we do have a product owner and the other developers and also the testers, including the business analyst. So, I think all of them would be reporting to the product owner, and will be even the project manager would be reporting to the product owner. So what will be the roles and responsibilities of the product manager in this case?
So Akshay, like exactly, it's not like it would be directly reporting to product manager. It's mostly like they do work hand to hand to ensure that the product doesn't move out of its like predefined path, like what exactly it meant to achieve. For For example, if we just take into consideration the project initiation phase when a project charter is being developed or project at the initial stages,
Mhm.
so there's an scope that has been defined in a project charter, correct?
Okay, so all the competitor analysis and all those stuff
Yeah.
for that particular thing.
Not exactly. The stakeholder analysis, like the project charter doesn't really contains all the competitor analysis and all those things. It usually creates like the goals. What exactly are the goals that the project is meant to achieve? What are the deliverables? And we really shouldn't mix goals with the deliverables. So the goals are something that are really specific, and at the same time, it should be measurable, attainable, relevant, and it should be time bound. That is what a goal really looks like. Okay. But
Okay,
at the same time, deliverables are something that that exactly what exactly that project is meant to deliver. Okay. And when forming the project charter in the initiation stage, like there's always an scope that particular for a particular thing. If we just take into consideration, there's a scope, like what exactly the product is, what are the scopes, like what exactly that product will fulfill. And
mhm.
then there are two things in the scope that are in scope and the out scope. So
Yes.
what exactly is the in scope is like if we have an extra time at hand or if we have an extra resources at a time, these are the things in scope are the things that can be done in that particular project. If the time allows or if the resources allows or if the budget allows. Okay. And then there are things which are out of scope. That are the things that really wouldn't be done in that particular project. Either we have the resource or not, it doesn't really matter. But out of scope things are certainly that won't be that targeted. Okay.
Okay,
So that
so
is
in
some.
scope and out scope, a product manager would be deciding, not the product owner.
Yes, correct, correct, correct.
Okay, okay,
Product
got
owner mostly what it does like is like they prioritize the thing.
it. Mm-hmm.
They work with product manager and project manager at the same time. Mostly what used to happen, like as I have told, like in many of the projects, like there is no role of a project manager. Mostly the product managers handle the role of a project manager at the same time. But since it creates a burden in the major projects, so that
Mm-hmm.
is when it just bifurcates the entire product into like small projects. So product manager is something that really corresponds to the role of a program manager. So if we just take into consideration, like a product manager is something that would be looking into 3 or 4 different projects at the same time. Okay.
Okay,
And each project have a project manager. Okay. And each project manager is like trying to attain a particular set of goals. Okay. And is working closely with the product manager. And product manager is someone who has an idea of all the other projects that are under him and will be accomplishing a major product.
okay, all right, got it.
That is how it goes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, Anant, I have one question regarding the rules that is
Mhm.
defined in, you can say, agile process. This side, Himanshu, right? So basically, that is like after the like tool selection and all. So this is the agile protocol you can say we are following. So I just wanted to know who is defining the sprints and timelines as well, and what we call them, and is there any standard term or not? And second thing, if there is any iteration coming up like during the development or design process, so what we call them and how we are tracking.
Okay. So for that entire thing, like from defining the timelines to like timelines is something that is like defined mostly by the tech leads, and it is done along like if we just take major projects like it is usually easy because the number of developers engaged in that particular project is are
Mhm.
usually large. So what happens used to happen is like the effort estimation thing is comes into play. So what usually happens, like we often do come across the word user stories. So there are user stories that are formed. So when these user stories are formed, there's a session where each and like what we call a sprint planning or a sprint grooming session, where each and everything would be made clear to the like developers that what needs to be done in that particular story. Okay. So, and then effort estimation comes into play. So there were met with like plethora of, ways for an effort estimation. One of them is like t-shirt sizes, and then there's a Fibonacci series, and then there are different terms in an effort estimation, like the dot voting and the planning poker. So what exactly happens in that is like if we just simply just take into Fibonacci series. So what happens like the number of developers, for example, 5 front-end developers will be working on that particular on the front end side, and there's a story that do requires the front end part in it. Okay. So each one of them would be giving their estimation for that particular task individually for on a scale of like 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and it depends on organization to organization how long they want to take it, like the Fibonacci series. Okay. And being the easiest and 13 being the hardest. So what usually happens is like each one of them will give their
Anant, you are not audible.
sorry, there was some network issues. So when I just say sorry, Himanshu, I just faced some network issues. So there
You
was
were
an
explaining
effort. Yeah. Yes. So there is an effort estimation techniques that comes into play. So in the effort estimation techniques, each developer would be giving their estimate for that particular task, depending on how difficult they feel that task to be on a scale of 1 to 13. And then like it depends on organization to organization, how far we do want to take it. So, and then an average of all these ratings would be taken, and then that task is allocated like this task do require this much of effort. And then if that task do require this much of efforts, then the tech lead would come into play and would say, okay, if it requires this much of efforts, these much of days would be required to complete that particular task. So that is how that estimation and the exact estimation of that particular task comes, and like how much time would that task really take. And then there are other things that used to track what how exactly if the task would be completed on time or if the project would be completed in time is the burn down charts. That is something that came across in the project management. So if we just take a particular developer, so once the like the estimation of that particular task is given, so what happens like developers are like given particular number of, or everyone has been given particular number of points that they need to burn in that particular week, depending on their level, like mid level or high level, or depending on their um, uh, understanding of that particular project and the code at the code level itself. So and then it is used that then we used to track like what exactly how much points are burned in that particular week. So that brings a real clarity on if that project is going to be get delayed, irrespective of whether like what exactly things have been done, but exactly if the project is on track. That is how it is usually done. So I guess that brings clarity, correct, Himanshu? Or if I'm missing out on something, please let me know, like exactly what if any more clarity you would be needing.
Yeah, I got my answer. Basically, my concern was like how you guys are defining the like sprints and what kind of features you are putting in, like you can say initial stage of the sprints. So I got that answer. And apart from this, like I just wanted to know like that secondary thing that I asked, how you are scaling or you can say tracking for the extra effort that you are putting over there.
Okay, so the extra efforts, like the like if there's a change in request, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly what happens like during the initiation of an sprint, what happens? There is something called objective and the key results. OKRs, what we call them OKRs. So objective and key results is something that are defined at the initiation of the sprint that do holds like at this sprint, this is the objective and these are the key results that we are planning to achieve from this particular object for this particular sprint. So these are the key results that we are planning. So anything that do comes as an extra would first require the approval of a product manager and exactly what value does that thing really holds, because when I just say value, so effort and values are something that are completely different. If something is high on value doesn't really mean it is high on efforts, and if something is high on efforts doesn't really mean it's a high on value. So let me just give more clarity on this entire thing. So if we just take a functionality into
And
consideration.
we lost you again.
Okay.
Your voice is not clear.
Okay.
Hello.
Himanshu, am I audible?
Yeah. Yeah, you are audible, but we are
Hello.
not getting Anand.
So,
Yeah.
okay, fine. Yeah, Anand,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
So let me just bring more clarity into entire things. So when we say like if we just take a functionality into consideration, okay, from a product perspective, if there's a change in that particular functionality, okay, so what happens is like how important is that functionality in that present scenario, or how important is that functionality is for that particular release. That is something that needs to be really clear on the product side, because like if we just take any functionality and it do requires high efforts, for example that efforts required for that particular functionality is 30, and that value that it holds, or like value, when I just say value is something, how important is that particular functionality in that particular release, okay, is really low. So I guess that thing loses its priority at that same time. Correct? But at the same time, there is one functionality that do requires the effort of one and two, but the value it holds is really high, because there would be a great change that would be bringing in that it would be bringing in that particular release. So that too helps in deciding what is the priority of that particular change or the request that has been given by the product owner or product manager. What exactly is the priority of that thing? And depending on the priority of that thing, the next sprint that would be starting, that thing or that particular change would be placed in that upcoming sprint. For example, if it's on higher priority, then the upcoming backlog or this backlog that we would be working on after in the next sprint would something that would contain that change request. But if it's certainly not something that do holds a high value, uh, and can be moved on to the later sprints, that can be that is done in during the estimation and the value to part. So I guess that brings clarity to it. Correct, Himanshu?
Correct. Correct.
And
So that is how it
Himanshu,
is done.
few things. So as I already told, the sprint is a very fixed thing. I mean, if you think like your requirement is not clear, so better to move to the Kanban method. Otherwise, if you found like your requirement is very clear, the owner found like the requirement is very clear to the development team. So, and in this case, if there is any changes needs to be done, if that is minor, that can be accommodated in the same sprint. If the change is a major one, then that particular change needs to be uh, like uh, like taken care in the next sprint. We cannot add that major change to accommodate in the same sprint.
So in this
I hope
manner,
you got the point.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
if you do add the major changes in the current sprint, it will affect the whole sprint timelines. Because we have the fixed timeline, fixed feature to be done in a particular time. So
Mhm.
if that thing is a major change, so it will affect everyone's. It will affect everyone contribution. So at the end of the sprint, we will not be able to like achieve what we have decided to achieve. Got it?
Shashank, isn't the BRD, like before we jump into a product, we always prepare a BRD, right? It's
Yes.
a product manager's duty. Right. So based on the
Hmm.
BRD, can't we decide whether we want to take on like the sprint planning or the Kanban method? So it should be dependent. Like BRD should give a clearer picture, right?
Yeah, it
And
depends on it. Yeah, it depends on it depends on the product owner, how good he is in creating the BRD. Suppose if he wanted to implement some feature and he has just mentioned in the BRD, he has just mentioned the overall idea how he wanted it to be. So while doing the development, the developer can have like uh, doubts like regarding the flow, exact flow. So if he is not accommodating these exact flow cases, so it might be difficult for a development to like do in that particular time. I mean, it completely depends on how good we are preparing the BRD, as well as we are doing the grooming with the development team. Before starting a sprint, the product owner's responsibility is to groom the BRD to each and every developer in the development team, so that he can have like better understanding of the development team can have better understanding of what is going to be taken up in the next sprint. So before any sprint planning, we should have a grooming session with the product owner to just to clear out like what next we are going to implement. And like in that meantime, the developer will have enough time to digest those requirements and ask anytime with the product owner. I hope I'm clear.
yeah, I was like a small doubt. The user stories, how different is the user story from BRD? Like, is it that they are the same thing or different? Because I read on the document that Anant was sharing before
Hmm.
that in the user story, you informally you write about the features of the product, right? The
Yeah.
whatever the project the owner wants to develop, right? So is it like
Oh,
we
yeah.
prepare the feature list, right? So I have a question that is it different from the feature list that we prepare, or is it like another term for feature list that we make? Uses different from the feature list. That is my question.
No, exactly. If you'll ask me, like if I'll tell you briefly, then these are different things. The BRD and PRD will only describe how like what is this requirement is, why like what's the business perspective of that, and what like how it will affect the overall product we are building, and how it will be the overall flow of that particular requirement. But what exactly the user story tell to the developer is like what are the exact the deliverables needs to be done within a particular sprint. suppose we have a feature, we have to chunk it down in such a manner, in such a small pieces, so that the developer can do it and like deliver it within that sprint. So user story is something which is deliverable within that period of sprint, and BRD is something which tells about overall product and features, how it will gonna affect the whole product and the business perspective.
Okay. So user story is basically the breakdown of the
Yes.
whatever the features that I want to implement.
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. I think Anant will go through all these things. Epic, what is epic, user story, task, subtask, those things. Like further slides, in the further
Yes.
slides.
Yes. So exactly, like what exactly, for example, if there's a feature list, and feature list is something that a particular product needs to have that particular feature, but at the same time, user stories is something that is something from the perspective of a user. Exactly, if we just take it into simpler words, like how will that particular feature and feels user, I want this. So at the end result is this. So that is what's the format of a user story usually looks like. So that is how it is. Okay. So so moving forward, then there's an agile development process. Like agile development process do contains a product backlog. From there, we do find out some of the items that needs to be done in that particular sprint. That becomes a part of the sprint backlog. And then there's a planning that is to be done in that particular thing, then designing, then development testing, and then particular thing is released as a final product. So this is the cycle of an agile development. Okay, so the terms that we do come across in this agile development process is product backlog. So product backlogs is something what we call an ordered list that needs to be completed in order to improve the product or complete the product. So that is what an product backlog is. And this is where like the entire set of the instructions or we would say the entire list is related to the entire product, not for the particular sprint. At the same time, sprint is something that will be taking like the chunks of work we would be taking from the product backlog, and we would be like completing it that a particular sprint. That is what an sprint backlog is. So now the next thing is the sprint planning. So as we all know, yeah. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, Anant, you are audible.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, great. So now the thing that Shashank mentioned earlier is sprint planning. So what exactly is the sprint planning? So before the starting of a sprint, what happens like there are chunks of work that has been taken down by the product owner and the product like from by the product owner, project managers, and this has been decided like this is the chunk of work that we will be completing in this particular sprint. Okay, depending on their priorities and values and estimation of the effort that they would be requiring in that particular sprint, that chunks of work is taken down. Now, what is happened? Like this entire thing is the entire clarity of the things would be given to the developers and all the people who would be working on that, and there would be like cross questioning, and then they at that same time like what exactly will be achieved in that particular sprint and how the collaboration and the whole Scrum team will work is something that is done in the sprint planning part. Now, when we are done with the sprint planning, so there comes the project planning phase, like the project planning phase. So in the project planning phase, like there's a technical design, task list, resource planning. This is where the project managers comes into play. Okay, the project team create like the all the things, the communication plan, the budget, and the initial schedule of the project, establishes the roles and responsibility of each and everyone in the team, and who is responsible stakeholder for that particular project. Okay, that is what is done in the project planning phase. Then comes the project designing phase, where all the designs, the prototypes, the HTML screen designs, the flow chart, site trees, photo impressions, UML schemas, is everything is designed, and this is where this like project designing phase comes into play. After that, then it's development and testing, and everything just goes back and forth between the testers and the developers until and unless all the bugs are resolved. Or it's not like there's always a complete product, but it's mostly like the bugs that are needs to be resolved on a priority basis are resolved, and then it's a final release that comes into play, their final product. So this is what. Okay. So then comes the sprint grooming. So grooming is more commonly referred to as sprint planning. That is what I have told you before. But the difference between sprint planning is something that it is applies to the immediately next sprint that is going to come into play. Okay. And this a sprint backlog grooming and sprint grooming is something that goes hand to hand with each other. So sprint grooming is something that brings clarity to the everyone engaged in the project, what exactly what particular sprint would contain, and what work they would be needing to do in that particular thing. If they have any doubts, they would be asking at that time. If they need clarity on what needs to be done, or if they don't have clarity, what piece of work they exactly need to do in that particular sprint, is something they would be asking in the sprint grooming session. So next comes the epics. So before moving on to these user stories, there are epics. So epics is something like like the greater idea of the things that needs to be done. And like for example, if there's a project, so we can just take into consideration a bigger project, and one milestone do contains like the homepage. Okay, like the homepage would be designed in that particular milestone. So in that particular milestone, if there's a home page, and in that home page, there's also a payment module. So if we just take into a payment module, so payment module would be an epic. And inside that, there would be smaller chunks of work, like the user story, like what exactly the payment module should take from the user. For example, if it needs to enter the debit card details or the credit card details, what should be the name, the CVV number, or the expiry date, the initiation date, all these things. So each one would form an individual user stories, like what exactly the user story needs to like needs to be done in that particular user story. And that inside each that user story would be the task, like what exactly the front end engineer needs to do in that, what exactly the back end engineer needs to do in that, and if how exactly will be that like testing would be done after that. So exactly that is how it goes. So it is like epic, like the milestones, then the epics, then the user stories, and then the task. That is the funneled up process of the entire things. Now, initially we have also discussed about the story points. Like story point is something like we call an effort estimation. That particular thing or the particular story, how much effort would they require in that particular thing? Now, to complete that particular task, how much efforts are required is something the story points to tell. Now, the next thing while defining an effort estimation is like the techniques that I used are like planning poker. There are very different techniques and plethora of techniques that do comes into play just to make things interesting. There is a planning poker technique, and then t-shirt sizes, dot voting, and that do requires the engagement of the entire team, so that entire team has a clarity on the things and to give their estimates. So at the end of that, a final estimate would be given for that particular task, and it is decided that this task would be completed in that particular set of time. So that is how it is done in the story points. Shashank, anything you would like to add over here before we move on to the last part that are the sprint planning, the daily stand-up, sprint reviews, and the retrospective meetings part?
Nothing from my end. It's just like just related to the story points in some of the organization. I mean, like there is not a right way or like wrong way in this defining the story points. Some of the organization what they used to do is we used to consider this story point in terms of hours. Suppose if a task is having one story point, then they can decide it like it needs to be done in 1 or 2 hours, and three story points needs to be done in 4 to 5 hours like that. But in some of the organization, what exactly happen is like story point, they don't consider story point as in terms of hours. They consider in terms of like complexity. Suppose we have two developers, A and B, and A is the junior and B is the senior one. So we have a particular feature. So this particular feature might be easy for like senior developer, so he can give the story pointing to that particular feature as a five, let's say, and the junior developer can commit the same story pointing for that feature to be like 8 or 13. So while doing the sprint planning, what we can do is we can assign that particular feature to the person who is giving less story pointing or like in that way. So that's what it is. Yeah, Anant, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Shashank. So the last part we would be coming across, like in the Scrum and sprints, when we do come across these things and the Agile, there are various meetings that do that used to happen. So we often do come across the sprint planning meeting that I have already told you about. Then there's a daily stand-up. So what is the really use of a daily stand-up? So if we just take daily stand-ups into consideration, there are things that needs to be discussed in the daily stand-ups that are what all things was completed yesterday, what we are planning to do today, and what exactly are the blockers in that particular point of time. And if we are going to phase one, so that is something that needs to be done in the daily stand-up. Then the sprint reviews are the demo meetings in which, like at the end of the sprint, we used to give the entire like what all things have been achieved in that particular sprint, and where functionality is shown to the product owner to gain the acceptance on the completed work. So that is what happens in the sprint reviews. And the most important that often missed during the entire project management is the retrospective meeting. So at the end of the entire sprint or milestone, there's always a retrospective meeting that comes into play. So where it is discussed like what all things went well, and what can be like implemented in the next sprint, what didn't went well, and how it can be improved from the next sprint, where exactly the process lags in the entire sprint or the milestone. So that is something that is often missed and often lose its purpose. So retrospective meeting is something that really needs to be worked upon, I guess. Okay, so anyone, if anyone has a doubt, please throw me your questions. Just let me know if anyone wants to know something, any of the terms you might have come across in any of the project that you might be interested to know about, or anything that you would be needing more clarity on. Ankit, Anshu, Anirudh, Anurag, Ashish, anyone? Hina, Himanshu,
No thanks, Anant.
thank you, Himanshu. So Shashank, would you like to close this session?
Uh, yeah, I think if we don't have any further questions, we can close it now then. So Fine, then thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for joining. And this sheet will be shared to shared with you, as well as also we have the recordings of it. So in case in future if you wanted to know any agile terminologies, so you can reach out to me, and you can obviously refer this recording. So yeah, that's all.
Sir, one question from me. Shivam,
Yeah, Shivam, please go ahead.
during sprint planning, they let all the developers to vote, like how many days it will take to like complete some task. So like there are 20 developers and like five developers says it will take 5 days, and most of the developer like 10 developers say it will take 7 days. So how will project manager decide that how many days this sprint should be?
So Shivam, what
Okay.
usually happens in that case is there is no perfect there is no perfect timeline that can be shared exactly for that particular thing. So an average of all the things it would be taken, like all the estimates would be taken. That is something, and then the tech lead would come into play and would really recognize like how much number of days would it really require from their end, taking into consideration the effort estimation given by the team on that particular thing, and like the entire product clarity, how much efforts do they really require, because if we just take into consideration like there might be a smaller team that do require small efforts for that particular task. So in that case, what happens the effort estimation can't be given because the team size is small, and if only one or two developers give their estimate, it is most likely a high chance that the effort estimation given by them would be high and the time required would be really less. So in the project management, if what's more dangerous than the timeline exceeding is like timelines are achieved before time. Like that is also a backlash, because in that case it is taken into consideration that the timelines were not really shared with consideration. So when we just take when there's a big project and that estimation are taken from each and everyone, then an average of all it is taken, and then it is reviewed by a product lead and tech lead. So how much time and efforts it to really require in that particular thing.
Okay, thank you.
Anything you would like to add over, Shashank? If I'm missing also out on something.
No, no, that's all. That's all. In that case, usually what people do is used to take average of all the voting session. Means let's suppose if we have 20 developers, so we can throw that story to all the developers to do a story pointing of onto that card, and the tool itself will take the average, and that average needs to be added in as a story point in that particular card. So one of the tool which needs to conduct this voting session is like thunderdome.dev. So you can check it out, I mean, if you're interested. I'll also post in this group chat. Yeah. Any other question, guys? Fine then. So I think then we can end up this session. So thanks, Anant. Thanks for this wonderful session about this all agile process. I hope the developers and all of us will get benefited from this session a lot.
Thanks a lot, Shashank.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone. Thanks for joining. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.